My wife cheated with our neighbor, and now she's forging my signature on our $350, $0 house to sell it behind my back. I just found out I might lose everything, including my retirement fund of $200, $0, in a malicious bid for revenge. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife, Emily, turned out to be a cheating bitch. Honestly, I thought we had a solid marriage. We'd been together for over 10 years, built a life, a house, a future. But here I am discovering she's been screwing our neighbor, and now she's trying to screw me over financially too. That's the part that's got me so furious I can't even think straight. The worst part, I found out by accident, and it's like my entire world just shattered in an instant. It all started about 2 weeks ago. I'd been working late more often than usual, big project at the office, deadlines, stress. Emily always said she understood, that she'd hold down the fort, but I started noticing little things that didn't add up. She was more secretive with her phone, always locking it when she thought I wasn't looking. She'd get defensive. If I asked who she was texting or calling, she'd brush it off, say it was just her sister or some coworker, but I knew better. One night I came home early, something I rarely did, and caught her sneaking out the back door at 11 p.m. I asked where she was going, and she told me she was just out for a walk, maybe to clear her head. I didn't buy it. Her face was flushed, her hair a little disheveled, and she was trying way too hard to act normal. I decided to check her phone the next day. I didn't want to, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I've always trusted her, but this gut feeling was gnawing at me. When I finally looked through her texts, my stomach turned. There were messages from our neighbor, Jake, talking about meeting up for more fun, and a lot of flirtatious emojis. She was calling him babe and saying she couldn't wait to see him again. My heart sank. I saw pictures she'd taken with him, more than just friendly, more than neighborly. They were clearly having sex. I saw her lying in bed with her phone, smirking at a message she sent him late at night. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I sat there, frozen, trying to process what I'd just seen. This was worse than I expected. I'd always suspected Emily was a little bitchy, manipulative, but this, cheating on me with our neighbor, that was cold. I felt a mix of betrayal, anger, and deep sadness. It was like my whole world was crumbling around me. I'd never imagined she'd do this, especially with someone right next door. How long had it been going on? Was I blind? Did I miss all the signs? The worst part, I knew I had to confront her, but I didn't even know how to start. I waited until she got home from her walk, and when she stepped inside, I was already waiting. She looked surprised, maybe even caught off guard. I told her I knew everything, that I saw the messages, the photos, everything. Her face twisted into a sneer, and she started lying right away. "You're crazy," she spat. "You're overreacting. It's just sex and it doesn't mean anything. Jake and I are just friends. You're jealous, that's all." But I could see her eyes were guilty. She wasn't even trying to deny it anymore. She just kept twisting her words, trying to make me doubt myself, like I was the one losing my mind. I felt a wave of rage I'd never experienced before. How dare she sit there and lie to my face? How could she be so callous? She's been sleeping with our neighbor, our supposed friend, and now she's trying to deny it like it's nothing. The betrayal cut so deep I couldn't breathe. I remember clenching my fists, struggling to keep my voice steady. I told her I'd had enough, that I was done with the lies, the cheating, the manipulation. I told her I deserved the truth, not her bullshit excuses. She looked at me with that same bitchy smirk, like she thought she could just lie her way out of it, but I knew better now. I knew everything. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing, trying to piece everything together. How long had this been going on? Was she planning to leave me? Was she trying to take everything? Our house, our savings, my retirement fund. I found out later that she'd already been forging my signature on documents related to the house, trying to sell it behind my back. I couldn't believe it. She's lying, cheating, and now she's trying to steal what's mine. That's when I realized I had to act fast. I couldn't just let her walk all over me. I had to stop her before she took everything I worked for. I started thinking about my options, about how to protect myself and what was left of my life. But honestly, I was just overwhelmed. I'd never felt so betrayed, so furious, so helpless all at once. It's like she turned my entire world upside down overnight. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time with a plan. She crossed a line and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not without a fight. The next few days felt like walking through a fog. Every time I thought about what I'd uncovered, her affair, the forged signatures, the house she was trying to sell behind my back, I got angrier. I kept replaying the moment I found her messages, the way her smirk looked when she lied to my face. It was like she was daring me to do something about it. Honestly, I was furious, but I knew I had to be smart. If she was already forging my signature on the house documents, she was trying to take everything I had built over the years. I couldn't let that happen, so I started digging. I contacted my lawyer, a guy I'd trusted for years, and explained everything. I told him about the messages, the forged signatures, her plans to sell the house. I wanted to know what legal options I had. The lawyer was quiet for a moment, then told me I needed to act fast. She was committing fraud, and if she succeeded I could lose the house, which was worth about $350, $0, plus my retirement fund of $200, $0. Not to mention the emotional toll this was taking on me. I felt like I was living in a nightmare. Meanwhile, Emily was still acting like everything was normal, throwing her bitchy attitude around, acting like she was the victim. She'd lie about where she was going, say she was just out with friends or shopping, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I'd seen the texts, the pictures, the signatures she was forging. I had to gather evidence, so I secretly installed a few cameras around the house, not to spy on her, but just enough to catch her in the act if she tried anything else. I wanted proof, not just a gut feeling, but solid evidence I could use legally. One night I caught her sneaking into the bedroom with her phone in her hand. I watched her type something, then hide the screen when she saw me. I confronted her again and she snapped at me, trying to turn it around. "You're just paranoid," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. "You're making this all up. I don't know what you're talking about." But I had enough. I told her I knew about the house documents and her plans to sell. Her face went pale for a second, then she started to scream, calling me crazy, saying I was ruining everything. But I wasn't backing down. I had to protect myself, and I wasn't going to let her steal everything I'd worked for. I also started to contact a forensic accountant, just to review the financials. I suspected she was trying to drain my retirement fund, which was sitting at around $200, $0. She always hated that I was saving so much, told me I was too cautious. Now I see her greed was worse than I thought. She was scheming to take the house, the money, everything. She even went as far as forging my signature on some papers to transfer ownership of the house. I found out she'd already submitted some documents to the bank, trying to get the sale approved without my knowledge. I felt sick. I knew I had to act fast, before she could do any more damage. I retained a lawyer specializing in family law and fraud, and we started working on stopping her. I also got a private investigator involved, just to confirm what I already suspected, that she was planning to disappear with the house and my savings. Every day I felt more betrayed, more furious. How could the woman I loved turn into this manipulative, greedy bitch? It was like she'd been planning this all along, waiting for the right moment to strike. I wasn't just going to sit around and let her walk away with my life savings and my house. No way. I was going to fight. I started compiling everything, screenshots of her texts, the forged documents, bank statements, everything. I knew I needed airtight evidence if I was going to stop her legally. I also looked into criminal charges for fraud and forgery. I was ready to go to the authorities if that's what it took. I couldn't believe she'd go this far, lying, cheating, trying to steal everything. It was a nightmare, but I was determined to come out of it with some sense of justice. While all this was happening, Emily kept up her bitchy act, pretending she was innocent, accusing me of being paranoid or controlling. But I saw through her lies. She's always been good at that, making herself the victim, spinning stories, twisting the truth. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I realized that if I didn't act fast, she'd succeed in selling the house, draining my retirement and disappearing. I couldn't let that happen. I had to put a stop to her plans immediately. I was scared, angry, and exhausted, but I knew I couldn't let her win. I was fighting for everything I had, and I wasn't going to lose it without a fight. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I stayed up late every night, poring over legal documents, bank statements, and the evidence I'd gathered. My mind was racing, trying to think 3 steps ahead of her. Emily, of course, was still acting like nothing was wrong. She'd strut around the house, throwing her bitchy attitude around, pretending she was the innocent victim. But I saw through her act. I knew she was trying to cover her tracks, trying to make me doubt myself, just like she always does when she's caught in a lie. I spoke with my lawyer again. We drafted an emergency court motion to freeze any transactions related to the house. The goal was to prevent her from selling or transferring ownership until we could get a proper legal review. She'd already submitted some documents to the bank, trying to finalize the sale. My lawyer warned me that if she succeeded in forging my signature and selling the property, I could lose everything. My house, my savings, everything I'd worked for. That's when I realized the stakes were even higher than I initially thought. I also contacted a forensic accountant who examined my financials. Turns out, Emily had been draining my retirement account, about $50, $0 already. And she was planning to take more. I couldn't believe she'd stoop this low. She's always hated that I was so cautious with money, always telling me I should spend more, enjoy life. Now I see her greed was insatiable. She saw the house and my retirement as her ticket to a luxury life, and she was willing to lie, cheat, and forge my signature to get it. The most shocking thing, I discovered she'd already started moving some money into accounts she'd set up without my knowledge. I found out because I installed a money transfer alert app after noticing suspicious activity. She was trying to quietly siphon off funds, probably to prepare for her escape. That's when I realized I had to act even faster. If she succeeded in selling the house, I'd be left with nothing but a pile of lies and betrayal. I decided to confront her again. It was time to lay everything out in the open, no more hiding. I called her into the living room and told her I knew everything. Her affair, the forgery, the money siphoning. Her face twisted into a sneer, and she started to lie again, spinning some story about how I was controlling and paranoid. She said Jake was just a friend, that I was imagining things. But I had proof, screenshots, bank statements, forged signatures. I told her I was filing for an emergency court order to freeze the house sale and any bank transactions. That shut her up for a moment. She looked panicked, but she immediately started blaming me, saying I was ruining her life, that I was the reason she was doing this. That's when I felt it, the boiling rage I'd been suppressing. How dare she blame me? I've been nothing but good to her, and she's out there screwing our neighbor, trying to steal my house, draining my retirement fund. I told her she had no right, no excuse, and that I was going to fight her every step of the way. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I told her that if she kept going, I'd call the police for forgery, fraud, and theft. Her bitchy attitude turned into a shriek, and she started yelling, calling me controlling and paranoid. But I didn't care anymore. I had enough evidence to take her to court, and I was ready to do it. Meanwhile, I kept gathering all the evidence I could, more screenshots, bank transfer alerts, copies of forged documents. I was trying to prepare for the worst. I knew she might try to hide or destroy evidence, so I was copying everything, making sure I had backups. I also reached out to a private investigator to see if I could get footage of her meeting with Jake or any other suspicious activity. I wanted to catch her red-handed if possible. I was furious. How could she do this to me? To us, after all these years, she was just throwing everything away for a quick escape. The emotional toll was brutal. Every day I felt more betrayed, more broken. I kept asking myself if I'd missed the signs, if I'd been blind to her manipulations. But deep down, I knew she'd been planning this for a while. Her bitchy attitude, her lies, her sneaking around, it all added up. I felt a mix of sadness and rage. I'd loved her once, believed in us, and now I was facing the possibility of losing everything. My house, my retirement, my life savings, and the woman I thought I knew. I made a decision. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I was going to fight her in court, get a judge to freeze everything, and make sure she couldn't sell or transfer our house. I also told my lawyer to prepare for criminal charges if we found enough evidence of forgery and fraud. I knew this would get messy, but I was done playing games. I couldn't trust her anymore. She was a liar, a manipulator, and a thief. and I was determined to stop her before she took everything I had left. The court hearing came sooner than I expected. I had everything prepared: screenshots, bank alerts, forged documents, and my lawyer's detailed statement about her actions. I felt a strange mix of relief and dread walking into that courtroom. I knew Emily was going to do everything she could to spin it in her favor, to make me look like the bad guy. But I also knew I had the evidence on my side. Still, nothing prepared me for what happened next. Emily showed up dressed like she was heading to a fashion show, all bitchy and confident. She had her lawyer with her, a slick guy who looked like he knew how to twist words. She sat there smirking throughout the hearing, acting as if she was the victim. When the judge asked her about the forged signatures and the plans to sell the house, she denied everything. Said I was paranoid, that I'd lost my mind, that I was trying to ruin her life just because I was jealous of her friendship with Jake. She lied through her teeth, twisting the facts, trying to make herself look innocent. But my lawyer was relentless. He presented all the evidence: screenshots of her cheating texts, bank transfer alerts, copies of forged signatures, and the document she'd submitted to the bank. The judge listened carefully, and I could see the wheels turning. The evidence was overwhelming. Emily's face started to pale as she realized she was losing control. She kept trying to deny everything, but the judge wasn't buying her lies. He asked her directly if she was trying to sell the house without my knowledge, and she hesitated before answering yes. That was enough. The judge issued an immediate order to freeze any transactions related to the house and the bank accounts involved. It was a huge relief, but also a stark warning to Emily. She looked furious, but she knew she'd been caught. The judge also set a date for a full hearing where we'd present our case in detail. Until then, she couldn't do anything to sell or transfer the house. I felt a flicker of hope for the first time in days. Maybe I could stop her from stealing everything. After the court, I confronted Emily in the parking lot. I told her she was done: her lies, her manipulations, her greed. I told her I'd fight her all the way, and if she thought she could just walk away with my house and my money, she was dead wrong. Her bitchy smirk faded for a moment, replaced by pure rage. She spat at me, calling me controlling and paranoid. Then she stormed off, yelling that I'd regret this, that I was ruining everything. But I didn't care. For the first time in a while, I felt like I had a chance to protect what was mine. In the days that followed, I kept working with my lawyer and the forensic accountant. We uncovered even more damning evidence: more forged signatures, more siphoned money. I learned that she'd been planning this for months, maybe even longer. She'd set up multiple fake accounts, transferred money out of our joint savings, and even tried to open a new credit card in my name, all to fund her escape plan. Every new piece of evidence made me angrier, but also more determined. I wasn't going to let her get away with it, not without a fight. Meanwhile, Emily's behavior grew more erratic. She started accusing me of controlling her, saying I was the one cheating, trying to turn the tables. She even tried to manipulate our neighbors, claiming I was abusive and unstable. But I had the phone logs, the bank alerts, the forged documents. I had everything I needed to prove her lies. I knew she was trying to gaslight me, to make me doubt myself, but I refused to let her. I was done playing her game. I also started seeing a therapist, just to keep myself grounded. The betrayal was crushing, and I needed help processing everything. I couldn't believe the woman I'd loved for so many years had become this manipulative, greedy person. It was like I'd been living with a stranger all along. But I also knew I had to focus on the practical side, protecting my assets, making sure she didn't succeed in her plans. Every day I felt more exhausted, more betrayed, but I was also more resolved than ever to fight for what was rightfully mine. I realized something important during this whole mess. I had trusted her blindly for too long. I thought she was the love of my life, but she was just a wolf in sheep's clothing. I learned that you can't ignore the signs of manipulation, greed, or dishonesty. Sometimes you have to dig deep, face the harsh truths, and do whatever it takes to protect yourself. That's what I was doing now. I was fighting for my house, my retirement, my dignity, and my sanity. And I wasn't going to stop until I got justice. The full hearing finally arrived, and I knew this was the moment everything would come to a head. I was exhausted but prepared. I had all the evidence laid out: screenshots, bank statements, forged documents, the forensic accountant's report. My lawyer had done everything he could to prepare, and I could feel the weight of it all pressing down on me. Emily, of course, came in with her usual bitchy attitude, trying to act like she was the victim. Her lawyer was sharp, trying to twist facts and spin her version of the story, but I knew the truth was on my side. The judge listened carefully as my lawyer laid out the case. He explained how Emily had been forging my signature, trying to sell the house behind my back, draining my retirement fund, and transferring money into her own accounts. Then Emily's lawyer tried to argue that I was paranoid, that there was no proof of her intentions to sell the property. But I had everything: every screenshot, every bank alert, every forged signature. When it was my turn, I testified about how I discovered her affair, the lies she told, and the evidence of her theft. I could feel my voice trembling a little, but I pushed through. The judge looked at the mountain of evidence and then at Emily, who was now visibly panicked. He asked her directly if she'd been trying to sell the house without my consent, and she hesitated before finally admitting she had. That was the moment I knew I'd won some ground. The judge issued a temporary order to freeze any sale or transfer of the property and all related bank accounts. I could see the shock and anger on Emily's face. She hadn't expected things to turn out like this. After the hearing, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because I'd finally taken a stand and stopped her from stealing everything. Dread because I knew this was just the beginning of a long, messy legal battle. Emily was furious. She kept yelling at me, calling me controlling, obsessive, and paranoid. Her bitchy smirk was replaced with a look of pure rage. I just looked at her and told her I was done trusting her. I told her she had lied, cheated, and manipulated her way into destroying what we built. Now I was fighting to get it back. In the aftermath, I started working even more closely with my lawyer. We filed formal charges of forgery, theft, and fraud. The forensic accountant uncovered even more siphoned funds, another $30, $0 transferred to accounts she'd hidden. I learned she'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. She'd set up fake accounts, forged signatures, and even tried to change the title of the house in her name. I couldn't believe how deep her betrayal went. The emotional toll was relentless. I felt betrayed, angry, and exhausted. I kept asking myself how I missed the signs, how I could have been so blind. I loved her, or at least I thought I did. But this experience made me realize that sometimes love isn't enough. People can hide their true selves behind a mask of charm and bitchiness, and you only see the truth when it's too late. I also learned that you have to be relentless when fighting for what's yours. If I hadn't acted quickly, she would have taken everything: my house, my savings, my future. And that thought haunted me. Now I'm just trying to pick up the pieces. The court has set a date for a full trial, and I'm preparing to fight her in court for custody of the house and my remaining savings. I've started to rebuild my sense of trust in myself. I've learned that being cautious is necessary when someone shows signs of manipulativeness and greed. I've also learned that standing up for yourself, even when it's hard, is the only way to truly protect what's yours. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I won't let her destroy me. I'll fight for what's rightfully mine, no matter how bitchy or manipulative she tries to be. I just want this nightmare to end and to finally start healing. The court date for the full trial finally rolled around, and I knew this was the last hurdle. All the evidence I'd gathered, the forensic reports, the bank statements, the forged signatures, everything was ready. I sat there in the courtroom feeling a strange mix of exhaustion and determination. Emily, of course, was there too, trying her usual bitchy smirk, but I could see the panic in her eyes. She knew she was cornered. Her lawyer was doing his best to spin her lies, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, that she was just trying to fix our financial problems. But I had the truth on my side, and I was ready to fight for what was mine. When my turn came, I testified about discovering her affair, her manipulation, and the forged documents. I told the judge how she'd been trying to sell the house behind my back, draining my retirement fund, and forging my signature. I explained how I'd installed cameras and hired a private investigator to gather evidence. I saw Emily squirm in her seat, her bitchy attitude replaced with a look of desperation. The judge listened carefully, flipping through the evidence I handed over. It was overwhelming. There was no denying her guilt. The judge ultimately ruled in my favor. He issued a permanent order to cancel any sale or transfer of the house and declared that Emily had committed fraud and theft. The house was awarded to me, and she was ordered to pay back all the money she siphoned from my retirement account. She looked defeated, her face pale, her bitchy smirk gone. She knew she'd lost. The judge also ordered an investigation into her financial activities and suggested she face criminal charges for forgery and theft. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt like I was finally free. I'd fought hard and justice had been served, but the emotional scars still lingered. I was angry, hurt, and betrayed, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. I had protected what was mine, and I had taken back control of my life. I realized that I'd been naive for so long, trusting someone who clearly wasn't worthy of that trust, but I also learned that even in the darkest moments you have to stand up for yourself. No one else will do it for you. In the aftermath, I started rebuilding my life. I closed the chapter on Emily, cutting all contact, changing my phone number and focusing on healing. I also took steps to secure my finances better, learned to recognize red flags earlier, and made sure my retirement was protected. I found a new sense of independence, one I hadn't felt in years. I learned that sometimes the greatest revenge is just moving on and reclaiming your life. Looking back, I realize how much I've grown through this ordeal. I trusted for too long, ignored the signs, and let her manipulate me. But I also fought back hard. I stood my ground, gathered evidence, and refused to be a victim. That's the biggest lesson I want to share. Never let anyone steal your peace or your future. Trust is earned, not given blindly. And when someone shows their true colors, greedy, manipulative, unfaithful, you have to be prepared to fight for yourself. Because in the end, your life is worth more than lies, betrayal, and a bitchy wife who thought she could get away with everything. I may have lost a lot, but I gained my dignity, and that's worth everything.